All right, we have hit 8 o'clock. I'm gonna bring people in.
Oh, there's everybody.
Here we go.
Oh, wow.
My name is Stephen from Delaware Camera. Also from Delaware Camera here, we've got Mark Miller, the general manager. Joining us, our tech rep from Fuji is John Haggerty. And our presenter tonight, of course, who's a Fuji Pro, is Dan Bailey. Very excited to have him in here as well. Again, my name is Stephen from Delaware Camera. Thanks everybody for joining. Should be a really fun class tonight. I have seen Dan Bailey speak at least twice in the past few years and have certainly taken stuff away every time. So should be a good session and certainly very timely. In my office this morning, the temperature got down to 55 degrees before I turned the heat on. So it's getting cold here in Western New York. Certainly, I'd love to hear if anybody wants to throw in the chat where they're joining us from. I know we should have a lot of people from Western New York, Southern Ontario, our Jack's Cameras friends down in Pennsylvania, and people from all over as well. So if you want to throw in the chat where you're coming from, and sort of what your interest, what your experience level in photography is, love to see that, just so we have an idea of where we're coming from. I am going to get ready to turn it over to Mr. Dan Bailey.
Thanks, Stephen. So you said you turn your heat on when it's 55?
I do turn the heat on when it gets down to 55.
We have our heat set to 58. But we have a wood stove that we burn in the evening. So yeah, I just want to thank everybody for showing up. I see some people that I know. I see Gail there. Hi, Gail. Yeah, so I see a lot of friends that are some friends who follow me and I've met before in workshops and stuff. So thanks everybody for joining along. I have fun doing these Zoom presentations. I'm getting better at them. The hardest thing is knowing where to look. Obviously, when I'm doing the talk, I want to look at my screen, but knowing where to look at the camera, and it's all just weird, but we're all used to it by now. So I was telling Stephen that I've never been to Buffalo. I had a roommate who was from Buffalo in college one time. But of course, the thing that I know about Buffalo is the 1977 blizzard. I was at my grandmother's house in Hartford, Connecticut during the 77 blizzard. And I just remember it. We just heard the news all day for the week, just how much snow you guys had gotten. So we're having snow today. It's not 6 feet yet, but or 10 feet. But we've got a pretty good winter so far. So I went out and shot some photos this afternoon. And I'm glad that he suggested that I do a winter landscape photography workshop, because winter offers subject matter and possibilities for creativity that are completely unique, and not just unique from all the other seasons. They can be completely unique from day to day, week to week, year to year, with different snow patterns and wind, and I mean, so many other variables, temperature, and you could have hoarfrost and ice covering everything, and then a few days later, nice powdery snow, and then you could have sleet and just ice covering everything, and a variety of different types of weather and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and so here we go. So you guys can see this pink mountain, right? Okay, everybody's nodding. I see Stephen nodding. I just want to make sure all this stuff works right. So the great thing, well, yeah, so I live in Anchorage, Alaska. I think most of you know that, where we have winter for longer than Minnesota. I had someone had put that in the chat. You guys have 7 months of winter. We've got like 11 and a half, I think. So actually, we do have pretty nice summers. They're just short. But the winter months are probably my favorite time for photography, because the light is just so, the light is so amazing. Oh, I don't need that here. The light is just so amazing in the wintertime. And that's obviously, photography is all about light and capturing the way that light shines on a subject and reflects. And Buffalo is fairly far north in the US as well, not quite as far north as Anchorage. But when you have sunny days in the wintertime, December, January, I imagine the sun is at least somewhat low in the sky. And since you do have a lot of moisture up there coming off of Lake Erie, I would imagine that sometimes you can get some pretty cool sunsets with the clearing storms and that kind of thing. And so I'm just fascinated by the light that we get in Anchorage sometimes. And there's such a variety of cold and warm light, but the low sun is really special. And we're in the middle of it right now. And so the sunset is about 3:30, or it's after 3:30. The solstice is in about a week and a half, I guess. And we have 5.5 hours of daylight, which means that during those shortest months of the year, the sun just makes this low skimming arc across the horizon. And so this photo was shot about, I don't know what time it is. Let's see if I can get the, oh, not that. I can look at this here. This photo was shot 5:30 p.m. That's actually not right. I think the metadata is wrong on that. Anyway, you can get photos that are shot at 1:30 in the afternoon that look like that here in Anchorage in December and early January. And so that just makes winter such a magical time. And of course, we have fat bikes. And so that's actually a lot of how I get around in the wintertime. The fat bike gives me a lot of possibilities for exploration. So a lot of times I'll head out with my camera in a pack and just go out for a fat bike ride in the snow. And I'll be gone for quite a few hours. It might be, 5 or 6 or 7 hours. Many of those hours end up being in the dark. But it allows me to go exploring, and it allows me to explore it at a speed where I can cover a lot of ground and therefore see a lot of different landscapes in a few hours and see a lot of different types of terrain. And so I might, this might be a typical scene when I leave my house and I hit the trails. Anchorage has a lot of wooded areas. And so one of the things I like to look for is the sun coming through the trees. And what makes winter one of the things that makes winter such an easy time to photograph is that all the reflectivity in the snow reduces contrast by a great deal. And so it makes photographing scenes much more feasible. Scenes in the thick forest in the sunshine don't always work very well in the summertime, where you have way too many shadows. But when the snow covers the ground and there's white subject matter everywhere, the contrast is reduced, so you're able to photograph these scenes. And so I love shooting the sun coming through the trees and just looking at all the different textures in the forest. This is about a quarter of a mile from my house on the Greenbelt Trail, which in the wintertime is, snow biking and cross-country skiing trails. But we have all these swamps and forest lands that run near Anchorage, run right through the city. And so again, this is like 3:30 in the afternoon in December. And so, you know, beautiful warm light, nice reflectivity everywhere. To me, this is like the epitome of pastoral winter landscapes in Anchorage. This is my happy place when I'm out walking or skiing or riding my bike, to see stuff like this. And the nice thing is that sun stars work really well. There's enough contrast, and there's enough, if you have a clear blue sky, you can place that sun, stop the lens down. And with all that extra reflectivity, you still have enough light to shoot even at lower shutter speeds. And I shot this with the kit lens. This was one of the first photos I ever shot with the Fuji when I got my first X-T1. And it's still one of my favorite landscapes. And that's a testament, I think, to any camera, and especially the Fujis. I'm on X-T3 now and the X100, but I still look at some of my X-T1 photos with incredible fondness, and the colors and the resolution and just the feel of the images still carries all the same weight as it did when I shot the photo. So this magical pink light in the winter, that's kind of like my searching for the magic treasure in the wintertime. You know, we get a lot of really good sunsets, but it's this pink light that hits the treetops, and especially December, early January, you have a lot of these clear, cold nights will leave hoarfrost covering all of the trees. And so you might have a week or two of clear, cold air and no precipitation, but this hoarfrost just builds up on all the surfaces. And so it makes everything covered with these big puffy white layers of snow and frost. And of course, when that afternoon pink light hits that, it's brilliant. It's so amazing. I love photographing in these kinds of scenes. As I said, I'll ride my fat bike around the trails, and right around sunset time, I'll start to look up and pay attention. And if I'm lucky, I'll get these pink light. And this is in a particular spot where at least twice in a row, where it's been the exact same day of the year, but the preceding year, and then the next year, where I find myself on the exact same trail at the exact same time in this little depression, crossing a creek in this little clearing, and having this brilliant magic light. So this was 1 year. This was, I think, the year before. And so I like to look for these convergences of light and dark. And with the wintertime, you have cool and warm light that are such nice contrast with each other. And I'll talk more about that. I think that's a really fun thing to look for in the wintertime. A couple of years ago, I shot this tree in that one spot. It's such a little treasure trove of open. A lot of times in the forest, you can't see, you don't have much of a view. You can kind of see these treetops through the breaks in the trees. But when you get to a clearing like this, you can have the freedom to look around and pick out a variety of subjects. So I want to say that every picture in this show is a straight JPEG off the Fuji camera, except for this one, which was this photo that I brought into Luminar and decided to edit a little bit. And so I just wanted to bring out a little bit more clarity in the sky and those really faint clouds, which are there, but they're just kind of hovering in the background. You can't see them very well. So I like this one edited version. But every other photo in this slideshow is just a straight JPEG out of one of my X series cameras, and that's usually how I work. I shoot most of my fun work that I'm just shooting for myself. I'm just shooting JPEGs because I love the freedom and the creative liberation of being able to nail my scenes in the moment and not have to worry about going home and processing them later. I like to walk away from my scene with an image I love, instead of walking away with a file I have to go process later when I have the time, and I sit at my computer and try to think, wow, I kind of remember taking that. What was I thinking? And instead I can just walk away with a picture that I love and be done. And then I can instantly email it to my friends and post on social media. But even besides that, it just takes up less room on the hard drives, and it's faster to open and easier to share. And so I've been a huge convert to just shooting JPEGs with the Fuji cameras, and I'm really excited about that aspect of the system. Even when you don't have that fantastic light, middle of the day is not usually a time when we think that we can get great photographs, but with really cool snowfall and wind patterns and ice and hoarfrost, possibilities are great in the middle of the day. Nice clear blue sky. This is that hoarfrost I was talking about. You know, a week or two of just clear cold weather, beginning of January. And that's not snow, it's just frost that's accumulated on all the surfaces overnight. And then it keeps building and keeps building from day to day. And so it gets to a point where this hoarfrost is so thick, and it's the most amazing subject to photograph. It's amazing to go hike in and ski in and photograph and just enjoy this beautiful type of scenery that is only present for a few, at most a couple weeks of this a year. We might get a couple bouts of it, but it doesn't last all winter. And this is just shot in my neighborhood about 3 blocks from my house, right before the Greenbelt Trail begins. And this is looking down my street. And I'm able to get all the houses out with a long lens. I'm going to talk about lenses towards the end. But that's one of the reasons I love using long lenses, is because I can isolate my subjects. And if I'm in a busy urban environment, I'm able to stop that. Turn off. So yeah, when I'm in a busy urban environment, I'm able to capture scenes and you know, clean my viewfinder of the street signs and the houses and the chimneys and stuff like that. So this is that magical pink light, very tail end of it. You can see the sky is just a little bit misty. A lot of times when we have that hoarfrost, right around sunset and sunrise, we'll have ice fog, and it'll last for much of the morning, and then we might clear out and have a couple hours of blue sky. And then as soon as the sun starts to set, as soon as the end of that pink color, the fog will descend back over the neighborhood. And it actually happens in different parts of the city. So we might have ice fog, and the western side of Anchorage might not have it. So you can see that the sky is kind of foggy here, but I've got this real nice pink light that's just beginning to fade. One of the most amazing things about mirrorless cameras that I discovered early on was, since you have that LCD viewfinder and the EVF, the electronic viewfinder, that is basically showing you a real-time view of what the sensor is seeing, it means that you know exactly what the picture is going to look like before you take it. And so this allows you to shoot in incredibly tricky light that you could never get away with when you're using a DSLR, unless you did a lot of heavy bracketing and then reviewed your photos later. But when I look through my viewfinder, I'm seeing exactly what the camera is going to shoot. And so that gives me confidence to shoot these kinds of scenes where I'm looking straight at the sun, shooting in high contrast environments. And it gives me full confidence to get what would normally be very tricky exposure. And most of the time I'm shooting an aperture priority and just using the exposure compensation dial to vary my exposure. And so I'll point my camera at this scene, look at the viewfinder, and if I like what I see, I'll take the photo. And if it just looks a little too light, I can turn it down, I can dial the exposure down, and then I'll have a histogram in my viewfinder for reference, so that I know, you usually want those highlights right at the end of the right edge of the histogram. So I can work with that and dial it up or down to my liking. And I don't have to bracket. and I don't have to, try to figure out what the exposure is going to be. I simply look at the screen and see what it looks like. So this is another example of that late afternoon light. I love shooting towards the sun in these kinds of situations. I think you get a lot of vibrancy. For those of you who used to shoot transparency film, slide film, when you put a slide on the light box, or when you're viewing a backlit transparent image, it's much more vibrant than if you were looking at the same thing, the same picture, but as a print. If you're just holding a print in your hand, that transmitted light creates a much more brilliant and vibrant image. And so that's why shooting through the sun is so appealing to me in these kinds of situations. And sometimes I'll include the sun, and sometimes I'll just include, parts of the sun, or exclude the sun and just have those little rays, the sun rays kissing through the top of the image or something like that. And so much texture in the snow. The snow offers such an amazing, diverse palette of potential subject matter, between the shape of the snow, the contours of how snow falls on things and creates these soft mounds and these shapes, and then the intricate patterns of this close-up snowflakes. Another thing that really fascinates me with wintertime, I mentioned earlier, is this contrast between warm and cool light. And so a lot of times I'll be standing in the cool light because I'm kind of down below, especially late in the afternoon, when the sun is hitting the treetops and the mountain peaks, but it's too low to actually hit what's on the ground anymore. And so this is a perfect time to capture these contrasts of warm and cool light. And so it's really intriguing to me to have, just have this juxtaposition. And sometimes the warm light will be much more apparent, and sometimes you kind of have to go looking for it. It'll be just like this small splash of warmth that just creates an accent to the scene. And so most of the scene is just cold. It's probably 10 below here. Just, really cold January, hoarfrost and everything you can see, and snow and ice in the creek, and ice build up on the sides of the creek. A lot of times we'll have overflow, especially if you have a creek that doesn't run so quickly, or even a lake. And what happens is ice forms on the top, and eventually it becomes so heavy, it keeps getting so thick, it presses down onto the lake bed or the stream, and it actually makes the stream overflow its banks. And so you could have a place, you might, there's actually a trail running alongside this creek. Well, in the coldest weeks of the year, you might have the creek being pushed out with this overflow, and you could have this huge section of icy, chunky, slushy ice that's completely over the banks of the creek on the trail. And so that's kind of a tricky time. It's one of the most dangerous things about traveling in the wilderness in Alaska, because when it's 10 below, you don't want to step in water. And so there have been times where I've been riding my bike and I'll accidentally, even with my boots, I'll accidentally step in someone. I'm pushing my bike through a section of snow. I might accidentally step in overflow over my boot. And I'm like, okay, the ride's over. I'm going home right now. Call my wife and say, start the fire and start the hot cocoa, because I'm kind of going as fast as I can. Stepped in overflow. So yeah, this is the same place, just capturing a different type of light and different type of color palette, even cooler, slightly more underexposed light than the last frame.
So Dan, I want to jump in. I've got a couple questions in chat that seem pretty applicable to the images shown here.
Well,
so one is white balance. So you're shooting JPEG. What are you doing with your white balance? So especially between this image and the next one and then the last one, you've got those heavy warm tones and those deep blue. Are you are you trusting the camera, or where are you putting things for white balance?
Most of the time, I keep my cameras on auto white balance. The only other setting I use on a regular basis is shade. And if I'm shooting a scene like this, where it's predominantly in the shade or in the forest, especially after the sun's gone down, I might switch to shade. And that just helps reduce the blue cast. So this was probably shot on auto, and this was probably shot in shade, where it allows me to kind of warm up the scene a little bit more. And that also warms up the sunlit, the warm light, it just even boosts that more. So yeah, that's a good question. Most of the time auto, but if I'm in a situation where I am in the shade, I think that shade white balance does work really well.
So then the other question is about the cold and your camera. And so have you ever had a camera freeze up on you? And also, do you have any tips or suggestions on how to get the most out of your batteries in cold weather? Because I know that personally, I have run into issues with that quite a bit.
Yeah, I actually forgot to put a picture in the show. I should have put in there. I have a picture of my X-T2 sitting on a tripod that I left out overnight while I was winter camping. And the next day, next morning I turned it on and it worked fine. It was totally covered with frost, but it turned on, it worked fine. I pressed the shutter and it squeaked a little bit and took a picture, and then it died. So the camera was fine. The cameras, Fuji rates their cameras down to 14 degrees Fahrenheit, which I can 100% attest. They will work way colder than that. I've shot mine down to 20 below and colder. So it's not so much the camera that's the trouble. It's when I used to shoot with my Nikons, the real problem was the LCD screen getting really sluggish, and sometimes even the screen would kind of blank out. With the no screen, no LCD screen on most of the Fujis, that hasn't been a problem. The lens is one thing that can be a weakness. The weather sealed lenses have better lubrication and sealing to prevent moisture and stuff from getting in. And the newer lenses have faster, more precise autofocus motors. Some of the, right now I have the 18 millimeter on. I'm using the Fuji webcam, camera as a webcam. But in that picture of my X-T2, the 18 is the lens that's on that. And that's one of the older X-series lenses. And it doesn't have a very fast autofocus motor. And so it's, obviously wasn't optimized for extreme conditions. But after that, the real weak link is the batteries, as you mentioned. And so when I'm going out, I will always carry at least 3 batteries, because I have, invariably, one's going to die, and then I want to have a backup of my second. And so what I'll often do is keep the batteries in my chest pocket of my jacket, and preferably an inner jacket. I might have an inner jacket and then a warmer layer over that. But my zipper pocket inside my chest, I'll keep a spare batteries with a hand warmer, one of those chemical hand warmer packs. And a lot of times you'll find that even when the battery dies, I can warm it back up in my pocket and eke a little bit more life out of it. So I can stick it back in the camera and it'll work for a little bit longer. But you should never go outside in the wintertime with the camera without at least one spare battery and a way to keep the battery warm. The battery packs, the grips that have 3 batteries, that would obviously work to help give you more juice. But I would prefer to travel lighter with just the camera and then carry a couple spares in my warm pocket.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions like that?
So I've got a couple exposure questions. So when you're out in snow, or like shooting in the snow, are you finding yourself pushing the exposure compensation usually? I mean, that seems reasonable, but are you going to a +1 stop? Do you have is there sort of a standard that you start with and then build off of? And then also, along with that is you're shooting aperture priority. Are you, again, is there a standard that you go to? Are you going for a larger depth of field with a smaller aperture, or are you trying to go a little more shallow?
That really depends on the scene. It depends on what the kind of look I'm going for. And we'll see some pictures coming up where I'm using a very shallow depth of field and some very wide. And so from that standpoint, if I want to have a wide depth of field, but I'm running out of light, then I'll turn the ISO dial. So I might crank it up. And I have no qualms about running my ISO dial all the way up to 1600 on normal shooting. Even at 3200 is acceptable. With black and white, which I'll show you, you can go even higher. But if I'm going out on a dim winter day, I might start at ISO 400 and just work my way up from there. And then, yeah, exposure compensation dial, yeah, about one stop will give you the nice white, bright snow. Again, I'm just going by feel, what it looks like in the viewfinder, what I want to see, and then also using the histogram for reference. But yeah, about one stop is going to get you a good start. So, and was that it? Exposure, yeah.
That covers it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll move on and we can ask more questions because I like questions, because it's not just me doing this. Okay, so yeah, another example of that contrast between warm and cool light. This was shot with the X100V, which I got just about a year ago. And it has quickly become one of my favorite cameras. In fact, there are many days where I've left the house with just the X100V. And it has a flip up screen, so that helps in tricky shooting situations. And then it has a few different features that my X-T3 doesn't have. It's got a new film simulation, and it's got a couple of other, it's got clarity in the Q menu, which is a really cool feature. And color chrome effects blue, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So actually a number of these pictures in the show will be from the X100V, which, like I said, I've fallen in love with this camera. When I never thought of myself as an X100 shooter, but when I actually tried one out, I was smitten. And so it always sits here right at my desk next to me, and for easy access running out the door. So it had that, the X100 has that 23 millimeter lens, which gives you a really nice, slightly wide view, which allows for lovely landscape focal length with really wide depth of field. So here's a completely wide depth of field all the way across, and shallow from front, or focus in focus from front to back. This was also the X100V. One of the, actually no, this is my X-T3 with the 35 lens. Another cool thing about winter is the lack of tones, or the very small array of tones. When you exclude that nice, brilliant, warm light, you can have an almost monochromatic scene. So this is actually a color photo shot with Velvia, and it's amazing how close to black and white it looks. So it's just so many different possibilities for shooting. And one of the things that helps this is adjusting the white balance to shade, so doesn't have a blue cast, and then raising the exposure compensation so the whites really do look white. I've got some other examples where that's a different view. But yeah, I look for scenes where I have simple juxtapositions, simple contrast between light and dark, front and back, contrast of two different types of tones or two different types of subject matter. And so yeah, for this I've got two different types of trees. I've got front, back, hoarfrost, and pine trees and deciduous trees. So I just love looking for those types of convergences and contrasts. Long lenses help with that, or longer lenses, because they allow you to bring your distant subject matter in close and kind of create a more two-dimensional, foreshortened perspective. And so this is the same kind of thing. This is a little park that's right near my house, just at the beginning of the trail. As soon as you hit the trail, you go about 100 feet and you cross this little bridge, and there's this swamp full of black spruce trees. But it's perfectly positioned so you can look over the trees towards the mountains. And so I like to photograph there a lot. That's a common place for me to go.
So Dan, with this picture and the last one, what do you have in EXIF data? What was your lens and what was your aperture set to?
Let's see. Oh yeah, we can look at that right here. So this was a 70 millimeter. Whoops, where are we? XT2 70 millimeter lens. So that was probably using the 50 to 140 zoomed out a little bit. Same thing here. And this is, yeah, same thing, 119 millimeters. So, yeah, probably using that 50 to 140 to kind of foreshorten the scene. I think the 50 to 140 is an amazing lens. But I also think that the 55 to 200 is a really fantastic lens. It costs a lot less. It's a lot lighter and more compact. It's easy to travel with, and it has incredible stabilization. So this was shot when I first got the XT1. I went to Iceland and shot one of the waterfalls. And so zooming all the way out with a 55 to 200, which gives me about a 300 millimeter viewpoint in, if you equate that to full frame. And so I create this very two-dimensional look, but I'm shooting handheld, and I wanted to get some of that blurry water. So I was able to handhold this picture down to a 25th of a second, all the way zoomed out. And that's the testament to how good the stabilization is on some of the Fuji lenses. I think that 55 to 200 is a real sleeper. It's not one that's often mentioned, and there might be periods of time where I don't use it for quite a while, and then I might drag it out for a few weeks in a row and fall in love with it again, because I think it offers a lot of versatility, and you get that long lens view for a pretty reasonable price, and also not having to carry a big heavy lens. Oh, so you guys, I'm not exactly sure my geography. Is Niagara Falls near Buffalo, right?
We are. So a lot of people, we've got people on both sides of the border right here. So Niagara Falls is 20-25 minutes away from the city.
Yeah.
But the whole region sort of, we move as one.
Well, yeah, and like right across, you have the bridge that goes over to Canada, right? And
Yep.
That's where all the high school kids go to buy beer, right?
Not this year, but yes.
Not this year, but in past years. Yeah, that's what I've always heard about Buffalo. Yeah, so you could shoot Niagara Falls with a really long lens and get this kind of wall of ice. I would imagine. Do the falls freeze in the winter? Or some of the falls, you probably get a lot of different ice formations.
With all of the mist and stuff, you can get some really beautiful ice formations up and around. And as you were showing this image, I was trying to picture the falls, because you like the angle of the falls with a lot of views. It's a similar angle, but that wall of ice behind it it's messing with my head as to like that. Like, so you're shooting down on the waterfall here, and then this is across the gorge.
So it's kind of like two waterfalls that run together. It's kind of there's a creek that comes down, kind of like a horseshoe falls, where one flows across, and then this other one. And actually, I think the back wall might just be layers and layers and layers of mist that freezes, like you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually specifically put this in here thinking of Niagara Falls, because I was pretty sure that you guys that's where it was. So that might be a fun thing to try, is to use a long lens to capture some of those Niagara Falls pictures.
So next year we'll have to get you out for an in-person session.
Yeah,
and we'll
have our vaccine cards in hand. So another subject I'd like to focus on is just extremely close details of the ice and the hoarfrost. And my favorite lens to use is the 50mm f2. And it's such an awesome lens. It's one of my favorites. I have more pictures shot with that lens coming up. But this 55-200 has an extremely close focus. And so this was just a little set of twigs covered with hoarfrost. And so this is actually the hoarfrost crystals that form on these surfaces overnight during this clear, cold weather. And then they just keep building, and keep layering on top of each other. So this was, handheld with the 50mm. ISO 800, shutter 160, exposure compensation plus 0.3, plus third of a stop, aperture 5.6. So yeah, this is one of my favorite winter scenes I've ever shot. And I was able to capture these little clear, nice intricate details against a shadowed background. Got another shot later from this series. And yeah, I love grabbing these really cool textures. There's so much possibility for texture in the snow. It's just amazing amount of variation. And then when you combine the way the light hits everything, and different atmospheric patterns and times of day, and then close-ups of ice, there's just so many different types of textures. And I think one of my favorite things to photograph is solid ice chunks shot with extremely sharp focus, because they're so crisp when you can see all this amazing detail on the ice. So that's shooting an icy scene like this. I would definitely stop down the lens and try to capture as much sharpness as I can in that crisp ice. And I think that was handheld, but it's light enough that I was able to eke out. A lot of times I'll hold the camera against my neck with the strap, strap around my neck, hold the camera pressed out with the strap taut, and that helps give me stability if I don't have a tripod. And then I'm looking through the LCD screen on the back of the camera to compose. A juxtaposition of motion and still. And so here's, so this was shot with the 18mm. Just a contrast of motion and nice sharp ice crystals and snow. I'm sure that Lake Erie could provide some amazing photographic opportunities. And I know that with all of the snow, you guys probably have amazing snow and frosty conditions out on the lake. We don't have a big lake like that, but we have the Cook Inlet, which faces west from Anchorage, faces southwest. And so we can get a lot of really cool backlit, looking straight towards the sun. And wintertime is a really cool time to photograph on the mudflats. This was a scene that I found out at one of the glaciers, but I would, maybe you would have this kind of thing on the lake during certain times of year, when the ice pushes up against the bank and these jagged plates form and just kind of get pushed up at the edge of the lake. And so this was a lot of fun. I shot this with the 35, and that's another one of my favorite lenses. I'll just keep this EXIF window open. The 35 f2 is one of my favorite lenses. Between the 35 and the 50 f2, I almost never leave the house without at least one or both of those lenses. I think they're amazing little pieces of glass. They're relatively fast, they're extremely light and compact, and they're just a lot of fun. You have a relatively nice close focus. So I love shooting details. And again, you can see all these really cool, sharp, crisp textures in this ice. And at the same time, switching to a different film simulation can make a huge difference. And that's one of my favorite parts of the Fuji cameras. And that was the number one thing that drew me in when I first tried the X series back in 2011 was the film simulations. And so this allows me to experiment with different looks right inside the camera as I'm shooting. And so, for example, this is Velvia, and then we have Acros, black and white. Just so many different variations. You can create dramatically different looks by just simply using a different film simulation. The moon is a really fun subject to photograph in the wintertime, especially when you combine it with some of the other landscape elements. I've got one or two other moon shots in here. So yeah, the film simulations. This is Velvia, which is usually one of my favorite, if not my all-time favorite landscape photography film, and now film simulation. It just makes for these rich, bold colors. And sometimes I won't warm up the scene because I want that cool look. I want that nice, rich, cool look that comes with Velvia in the shade. And I think those deep blues just make for a really compelling look to your imagery. And so here's a Velvia shot, totally not warmed up at all, just blue, and then grabbing that color on the mountains. This is that swamp I told you about near my house, where you can look over the trees and photograph the mountains back there. So this is Velvia, shot with the X100V. And this is the newest film sim that was in the classic, or that went into the X100V last year. And it's also in the X-T4 and the X Pro 3. And now the XS10 is classic negative.
Dan, have you?
And I'm absolutely in love with this look.
Film
and
simulations.
I just think it's so
have you done much
gorgeous.
Eterna with?
So classic neg is designed to reproduce
landscapes with snow scenes.
The look of classic print film, and for the model they used with their superior print film. And it just has this slightly higher contrast but muted colors. So it's kind of like classic chrome, but with more Fuji style colors. Classic chrome is pretty muted. It looks a lot like Kodachrome, but classic neg is kind of the best of both worlds. You have the muted colors and tones, a little bit higher contrast, but you still have the same kind of colors you might find in the Pro Neg film sims. So I love classic negative, and here's another example of it here. Yeah, I just think it's such a cool look. In fact, I've got quite a few more of those. So this is Velvia. So this is Velvia film simulation. Deep, rich, bold blues. And I've got another setting that I like to use in the wintertime is color chrome effect blue, which is on all the Fujis have color chrome effect, which increases a little bit more saturation in your colors. Color chrome effect blue increases the blue colors even more. And so I think it looks really cool in the winter to accentuate those really deep shadowed blues. So here's Velvia shot with that effect. Here's Astia, so not quite as deep, a little bit lighter, more muted tones of the shadows. This is Pro Neg Standard, so much more lower contrast, much more muted tones, almost verging on monochrome in black and white. And then here's Classic Negative. So it's got similar colors to those Fuji, like that classic Pro Neg Standard, but you have this nice, rich, increased level of contrast. When you combine that with the classic, or with the color chrome effects blue, you've got some really cool looks. So this is the X100V with color chrome effect blue and classic negative. And I fell in love with this look last year, and I shot a whole bunch with it. Here's an example of classic neg without the color chrome effect blue. And in fact, we can do this. And so the one on the left is shot without the color chrome effect blue. the one on the right is shot with the blue. So it's subtle, but it's there. It definitely gives you more pronounced deep blue look. And I would imagine that with all the frost and stuff you have coming off the lake, that you would have some amazing snow formations right at the edge with the trees and stuff. I don't know what kind of terrain you have out there. Here's another example. This is without the color chrome effect blue, and this is with. So it just gives you more contrast, a little bit more dynamic look. And you know, one of the things that I'm excited about photography is that it's not about reproduction. We're not trying to perfectly reproduce these scenes that are in front of us. We're trying to create artistic reproduction, or trying to create artistic representations. Instead of reproductions, we're creating representations that communicate our own ideas and excitement about the scene. So this is, you know, the things that excited me about this scene. I'm able to distill those down and create a photo that kind of communicates that level of power or beauty or awe or whatever it is you're trying to convey. And so I think these, between the film simulations and being able to control some of the other things like the color chrome effect and even the highlight and shadow tone, for wintertime, I might decrease the shadow tone to create, you know, to give myself less contrast, especially if I'm shooting in the forest. Sometimes I might increase the shadow tone for even more bold dynamic looks. So here's, I haven't shot much Eterna with snow. I remember shooting some Eterna last time I went to the Great Smokies, which was kind of funny because he had all these brilliant fall colors and I was shooting the most least saturated film. I do like Eterna. I think it's a pretty cool look. There's something to be said for pulling everything back. And I think that adds to that representational element, because what's missing is those vibrant colors, but you have enough compelling subject matter that invites the viewer to come imagine those colors and picture what in their minds what's missing. So I don't know why my camera's connections keep blinking out. I love shooting in acros in black and white, and this is looking at some of the different ISO settings. So here's shooting ISO 800 on this scene. This is 3200, which I think it's pure magic. There's definitely grain, but it's not offensive, and that's exactly, it's grain. It's not really noise anymore. The processors in the X series cameras are so smartly able to figure this stuff out and extrapolate data where it's missing and create a look that looks like grain instead of noise. And the random array of the X-Trans sensor has a lot to do with this as well. So this is ISO 3200. This is 1600, which is really sharp. And this is 12,800. So this is the highest native ISO you can go on the X series cameras. It's just gritty and cool. It looks like T-Max 3200 slide film or print film that was probably Kodak made that about 20, 25 years ago. Yeah, just a really cool, gritty, grainy look. And I like being able to vary those kinds of looks. Like 3200. This was shot using toy camera. So the advanced modes, those advanced filter modes, I don't use them all the time, but there's a couple that I really enjoy using. Toy camera, I rarely use it, but every once in a while I'll find a scene that just seems to work. And for whatever reason, I shot this in toy camera and I love the way it looks. You know, it's got some vignetting, it's got some increased warmth, kind of muted a little bit. It's weird, it's like muted and boosted at the same time. Just really kind of interesting color cast. Definitely has a style to it. And so, you know, it's the kind of thing where you do on a rare occasion, so you don't overdo it. But every once in a while, it just comes out with a really pleasing look. This is that same swamp that I've been showing you. Another one I love is miniature mode. And miniature mode is like an optical illusion. It tricks your eye into thinking that you're looking at something very small, because we don't see shallow depth of field out in the world unless we're looking very close. And if you're that close to a glacier, it must be a very, very small glacier. So these are the leading edge of a glacier where these ice chunks are about 200 feet tall. And I shot this from a plane as I was flying overhead. But I would imagine that if you, from some of the vantage points to shoot Niagara Falls, you're pretty far away from the falls, but you can frame them to get some interesting effects. This is just looking out over the Cook Inlet with miniature mode. And I love it because it's not so much that it makes things look small. I'm more attracted to the dreamy quality that it imparts on photos. So I've shot some of my aerials in miniature mode. I have a little yellow Cessna single engine airplane that I fly around. And in the wintertime, I fly over the mountains and open the window and shoot photos at sunset. And it's a ball. It's a lot of fun. And sometimes I'll shoot miniature mode, and it just gets this fun, dreamy look. So I'm going to talk about my favorite X series lenses that I tend to use the most. For wide angle, I'm a huge fan of the 14. We saw this picture earlier. I think the 14 it was one of the first X series lenses I got. Amazingly sharp, very, very low distortion, almost no distortion, and just brilliant, nice sharp colors or nice sharp imagery. Yeah, 14 is always my favorite. The 16, there's a 16-1.4, which I have not used, but the 16-2.8 is like the companion lens to that 35 and 50. I've used that. That's a fun little lens. It's just smaller and lighter than the 14, and it's weather sealed. This is the 18 as well. I don't use it very often, but every once in a while I'll pull it out and like the 55-200, it might sit in my bag unused for quite a while, and then I'll just get the inkling to pull it out and just kind of vary my compositions that I'm used to making and come up with some cool looks. We saw this earlier, the 35 f2. I said I'm such a fan of this series. It's funny that the 35 has become pretty much the default body cap on my X-T3 and with my X-T2 as well before. If there's one lens that's always on my camera, it's the 35. It's just the default lens that lives on there, unless I specifically want something else. And I just think this lens is so versatile. It has a really cool look up close. You can get shallow depth of field effects up close. If you back up a little bit and stop down, you can get wide depth of field, but you still have kind of abbreviated look. And I think abbreviation is a really important aspect in photography. You know, being able, not necessarily, not needing to show every single aspect of your scene, just abbreviating, distilling it down into a few workable elements that suggest a greater scene. Same kind of thing here. Just picking a few of these trees out and abbreviating. And again, the 35 f2. This is getting to the 50 millimeter f2, which I talked about. It's very much like the 35, just a little bit longer focal length. Excellent close focus characteristics. It's wonderful for isolating details up close and still showing just a little bit of the background to give you a sense of place and throwing that background out of focus. So this was on a fat bike ride right on the main trail. It goes over a bridge, it travels over a bridge over one of the roads. And so the benefit to going up over the road was I was able to see the sun that was, I couldn't see it down below in the trail. So I was able to get this vantage point of the low setting sun and just using the 50 f2 to shoot through these little pine trees that are right at the side of the trail. And that light makes the photo, this magical orange light. It's just, that's what makes this picture. And at the same time, you have these really sharp details in the pine needles. Whoops. Oh yeah, next picture. So this was that 50 f2 again. Same scene as before when I showed you the first one. Yeah, I just love the versatility of this 50 f2. It's just such a fun lens. It's tiny. It's like compared to the 56, it's half the weight, half the size, focuses twice as close, and it costs half the money, and it's weather sealed. It just I don't think you can go wrong with this little f2 series. A little bit longer is the 90 f2, which is probably the sharpest lens that Fuji makes. Just amazingly sharp, brilliant, crisp, sharp images. And again, shooting towards the sun and capturing this hoarfrost. And then you can even see when it's in this time of year, you can actually see the hoarfrost twinkling. It's just constantly in the air. And so I'm catching these little crystals as they're reflected by the sunlight. And here's the 90, again, photographing the moon. And then my other favorite winter lens is the 100 to 400. And I just think this is a really fun lens because it'll, as I was saying in the beginning, it allows you to pull in those distant subjects and clean up your composition just focused on a very small part of the scene and exclude everything that doesn't need to be there, whether it's houses or trees or chimneys or street signs. This is my neighbor's tree across the street. And I shot this from my front porch. I just walk outside of my porch and shot across the street with it zoomed all the way out to 400 millimeters right at the end of the day. And I'm just capturing the light direct, shooting directly towards the setting sun, getting all these really cool, intricate patterns, the hoarfrost. It's one of my favorite times of the year to shoot. The same tree, shot minutes apart from this one. I think it's just shooting a higher vantage point towards the top of the tree instead of the middle. But yeah, 100 to 400. Same thing here. This is shooting in my own backyard with the 100 to 400. I just think it's such a fun lens. And this is that hoarfrost being hit by the setting sun, that pink light. What the pink light looks like up close in those trees. And this one's my favorite. That's when the hoarfrost gets really, really thick. And then combined with that really warm, really warm light against the cool light. And this is, the moonrise being hit by the setting sun. And this I shot the other day. Same thing. I walked out on my porch, neighbor's pine tree, and it was snowing. So you can see all these thick snowflakes falling. Just shot a couple different compositions, shooting towards the sun, trying some abbreviation techniques, not showing the whole tree. And then this, I think, is my favorite. And just below the frame here, at the lower left, is the tip top of my neighbor's chimney. I was hand holding the 100 to 400 with the stabilization on, so I was able to exclude that. And yeah, I just love how this picture captured all of the warmth and this bright sunlight and the snow falling in the trees. So yeah, we're in the middle of winter right now. We've got a lot of snow on the ground. It's still coming down outside, and so I'm kind of looking forward to some landscape photography coming up. So that's it. That's what I have for you today. If you haven't seen my X series guide, this is my comprehensive guide to the X series cameras, and it teaches you everything that you need to know in order to get the best results from your Fuji camera. I go through all of the settings, show you how you can use every single one of them, or ignore them if I don't think that they're that important. And I show you examples of how you can use them, and then I explain in detail a number of the other settings and the more fundamental aspects of the X series cameras. You can find this on my blog, and so that's all my info, my website, which you can find my blog off my website, and my YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter, Dan Bailey Photo. So yeah, that's what I have for you today. So more questions? Yeah, I enjoy doing these. It's fun to share my knowledge with you guys, and even though I keep cutting out for some reason. Yeah, thanks for letting me do this for you guys. I appreciate you inviting me along. Yes, in fact, I just did an update that includes everything about the XS10 as well, and included a little bit more XT4 info. So yeah, as of a week ago, the latest version came out.
All right. So, and you're going to tell me that you don't like the XS10, right?
I haven't even seen it yet.
Uh,
I've seen it in. I haven't seen it in person. It's
okay.
definitely a departure from the X series. They're
Uh,
trying to make a more comfortable transition for people who aren't used to
So
I think it, I mean, the ergonomics aside, inside the camera is the exact same power and feature set of the X-T4, which is the absolute top of the line Fuji right now. And it also has the IBIS. So for a much less expensive camera, you've got like maybe essentially a little brother sister to the X-T4 with stabilization and all the features and video.
yeah. Yeah.
And
I have held the XT or the XS10, and John knows it may very well be my next camera. I've fallen in love with it, and just that smaller size coming
got
from
one
the
there.
XT3. That's awesome. So I want to thank everybody for joining. Again, I will post again in the chat the link to just a survey that helps us understand if you enjoyed the content today and what you're interested in and where you're coming from. And there is a link in there to our to sign up for our email list for information about future events, and also information about the specials. If you're interested in the photo gloves that I showed at the beginning, my beautiful ProMaster, these are the 4-layer or the knit photo gloves. If you're interested in the discount code on those, it's available at the end of the survey, or those exclusive $50 or $100 Fuji discounts. Yeah, if there are other questions, certainly.
Good deal.
Yes, I was sort of doing the math. Those also, there are some instant savings on a couple of the Fuji lenses and cameras right now, and those are in addition to any other instant savings. So it's some good opportunities if you're looking for looking for a new lens or a new camera. So
who doesn't want a new lens or new camera?
So awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate everybody coming and
Good presentation.
feedback.
Thank you,
And yeah, and any questions, certainly throw them in the chat, or at this point, if you have a question you want to unmute and jump in, please do so.
Yeah, there's only 109 people left, so or 99.
We're slowly shedding as people are going away, but if you do have questions, I'm sure Dan will stick around. I'm still here for a bit.
Yeah, so everybody ask
Question.
at once. That'll be the best way to go.
Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, you talk about using the viewfinder to judge your exposure. How do you compensate for the brightness of the electronic viewfinder?
I think most of my cameras are set to +2 on the LCD brightness.
Okay.
The screens are actually bright enough to use. I found that there are some situations where extremely bright light, it makes it hard to see the LCD screen. And so then I use the EVF. But I'm impressed at how bright it can be outside and still use the LCD screen. But
You use the LCD.
You got the EVF.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Who's next? Oh, what wildlife? We have moose. In the wintertime, the moose like to use our salad bar, use our compost bin as a salad bar and winter snack area. And so we might have, in fact, we came home from bike ride last week, and as we were pushing our bikes into the backyard, there was a moose right there. So we had to go in the front yard and park our bikes on the front until he left, which he stayed there for quite a while. And then they like to hunker down and sit next to the compost. And we've had them stay there all day and overnight even. So a lot of moose in the wintertime, because in the deep snow, they have a hard time walking in the deep snow in the hills, in the mountains. In the summertime, they like that area, but in the wintertime, a lot of the moose come to town. And we even have a number of moose that live in Anchorage year round. So that's probably the most common wildlife that we have in the wintertime. I do see snowshoe hares out there sometimes. There are lynx. I've only seen a couple. I've never seen one in the wintertime. And every once in a while, there's some bears who refuse to go to sleep and they keep causing trouble and throughout the early winter. And then they wake up early in the spring and start chasing skiers in March.
So I've got another question on the real quick from the chat. Somebody posted again on batteries, and I think that's actually the issue you're having while you're flashing is the cameras or the webcam is warning that your battery is low. It looks like.
You're probably right. Oh my
There
God,
it
I
is.
didn't even think of that.
But do you use any power banks, external chargers to charge your batteries while you're traveling on the go? Any solar panels, solar chargers?
I do. I have this Goal Zero thing, this solar panel, this little three solar panel, and then I have a Goal Zero external battery. It's the Venture 30, I think it is, and there's two of that model. And then I just have I also have a USB charger that works. It's a USB NP126 battery charger. And so I can charge the batteries directly from the USB or from the solar panel or any other USB charger. And those USB Fuji battery chargers can be found on Amazon. And I think that ProMaster actually makes USB battery chargers. So you may have some in the store.
There it is right there.
There you go.
So this is the dually charger. It charges two of the NPF 126 S batteries, charges via USB, and the USB cable folds right up into the charger when you're not using it.
Yeah,
And
that is nice.
this charger right here lives on my desk full time, and then I have another one that lives in my bag because it's a $20 charger and it's awesome to just be able to always charge batteries wherever I go.
That's pretty handy. That's good to know too, because the one I use isn't actually available anymore. So
What was the
I haven't been able
brand
to find
and
it.
what was the brand and model of that charger that you just showed?
The charger here is it's a ProMaster dually charger.
Okay, I see it. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, they make for any common camera these days, if it's a Nikon ENL 15 or the Sony, the Z100 batteries, or the Canon E6 battery, they make an option for pretty much all of them.
Good.
I just changed batteries.
I'm
Thanks, I
wondering,
didn't think of that.
my question is, how do you transfer your photos from your camera to post them on, let's say, Instagram? Do you use the remote camera app or something else?
I do use the remote camera app. It's really convenient to be able to transfer pictures directly from the phone to the phone from your camera.
It wasn't working for the longest time when the phones went up to iOS 14. So then it started working. I noticed a color shift though. I haven't retested it to confirm that, but I thought, oh, there's a lot more yellow when I look at it after transfer. Have you ever noticed anything like that?
I have not. I mean, in theory, the color shouldn't shift because it's just, the pixels are set by the camera. And so I guess there could be a calibration issue with the screen, but I do know that the app was a little buggy for a while. It used to work all the time, and then they actually revamped the app and made it a lot different. I was having trouble connecting with some of the cameras for a while, but now I'm finding it's pretty easy to use again.
Okay, I'll try it again.
Otherwise I'll just transfer. I just, will put them on my computer, and then I'll just make a folder where I can email. If I see a picture I like on the computer, I'll just email it to myself and then open it on the phone and save it to the phone and post it from there to Instagram.
Okay, thanks. Oh, one other question, if nobody's jumped in. You use JPEGs. Now, do you edit Your JPEGs, what's your editing tool when you do that? Say after you transfer it over or something to your phone.
On the phone, I haven't used any phone editing apps in a long time.
Okay.
On the computer, I use Luminar these days,
Luminar.
which I like a lot. I like the simplicity of Luminar. I think it offers a lot of different creative looks in a pretty easy to use program. It's powerful, but I think it's laid out pretty easily, and I find the looks to be fun. They're kind of in the same ideas of film simulations. You have some very diverse looks that you can easily see and choose from instead of endlessly sliding sliders trying to figure out, well, what am I going for? Should I add more clarity? Should I? What would Scott Kelby think if he saw how much clarity I was adding right now? You know.
Okay.
Yeah. On the phone, I think at one point I was using Snapseed on the phone. I've tried a lot of different things over the years, but I haven't had any phone editing apps right on my phone right now, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stuff.
Yeah. In fact, John Haggerty's the guy to ask about the app. John, what's wrong? Is the app work? What's wrong with the app?
It's gotten better. It's got, like you said, when they tweaked it about a year and a half ago, it was kind of problematic, but it has gotten better over time. You know, sometimes if I'm in an area where there's a lot of Wi-Fi, I can't get it to work.
Okay.
You know, but for the most part, I use it mostly to upload JPEGs to my phone, and like to people who do shoot RAW, you can process RAW files in camera to create JPEGs where it saves the RAW and creates a JPEG. So then you can use the Fuji Camera Remote app to upload images to your phone. So, but that's where I use it for all the time. Is just uploading. I don't use it so much as a remote, but I use it more just to upload stuff to my phone.
Okay.
I was using it as a remote the other day. In fact, when I first started shooting my YouTube videos and my video lessons a little over a year ago, I tried to use the app to control the camera, and I just found it just wasn't working. It was too buggy. So I got an HDMI monitor on top of my camera, and then I got a wired remote. Well, lately my wired remote has been failing, and I think there's a short in it. And so the other day I was shooting a video, and the remote it just wouldn't work. So I just pulled out the phone, and I used the phone to turn the record on and off. And so I'll probably end up using that for a while unless I get another remote. So it is pretty handy to use camera and a tripod, and then just sit there and tap the button instead of having to, because you can see what the picture looks like. You can sit there and study your picture, and then instead of constantly looking through and then craning your neck and pressing the button, you can just stand back there in comfort. You could even have your parked car next to the tripod with the heater running, and then just sit there and, that looks good. Look, I'm taking pictures.
Over the summer, astrophotography from a hot tub, I was controlling the camera from my phone, triggering the exposures, and just, all right, yep, here's another 2-minute exposure, let it run, and I'm just sitting out in the hot tub shooting away.
And I didn't even talk about night photography. We have northern lights in the wintertime, but I don't shoot a ton of northern lights because it often involves just standing around for hours waiting in the cold. And I'm not that guy. But I have shot some northern lights, and it is very rewarding when you see a really cool display of aurora.
Awesome.
That's one time I would shoot raw if I'm shooting aurora or night photography. Robin. Question, Robin. Yes. Robin Aldridge, ask question. Oh, no, you're not. No, no. Jose, sorry.
Hello. Yes. Can you put the link of the ProMaster USB charger for the XT2 batteries? Because I would like to purchase one of these. And the question is there a similar device for charging the GFX 50R battery?
I don't
USB?
believe Pro makes one for the GFX 50R, but I will see if I can get you a link really quick to the one for the 126.
Okay. Because I'm going to Patagonia now in February, and I bought a power bank and a solar charger. I'm going to take my GFX 50R and my XT2. And I'm very concerned because I'm going to make this 10-day trip to surround the Mount Fitzroy. So we will be on the ice field camp with no electricity. So we will need to recharge the battery with solar panel and to get some electricity to the power bank.
I just put
So-
the phone number for Fujifilm Edison in the chat. They
Oh.
might be helping. They might be able. I think spare chargers are available through them. So if you want to reach out to them for the GFX 50R, they might be able to help you out with that.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Roger had made a comment about the XH series. Did you have a question about that? Is Roger still here? Maybe not. So if
Because
you
I still
have,
use the XH1.
yeah, a lot of people are asking when's the XH2 coming.
I don't know.
Yeah, nobody never knows. I would imagine with the XT4, they rolled a lot of that stuff in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you were going to ask me in an unofficial capacity, I would say don't hold your breath waiting for the XH2.
Yeah.
Get an XS10 or the XT4.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I had put my YouTube address up there, but I want to stress that I have about 30 YouTube tutorials up there. Most of them are Fuji dedicated tutorials, and they're really quite fun. So I would encourage you to check out my YouTube channel. A lot of fun stuff up there.
Cool.
More questions? Any more questions?
So compared in the snow, what percentage of the battery do you lose compared to regular usage when you are in cold situation regarding the XT2 batteries, the 126?
It's hard to say how fast it drains or the percentage of shooting time. It does drain a lot faster when it's really cold. So sometimes it's surprising how fast it'll drain, especially if you shoot any kind of video or RAW. Shooting RAW will use more power too. So that's another reason to shoot JPEGs is you can eke out way more frames on a battery charge. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but my answer is you can never have too many spare batteries with you. And those chemical hand heater packs are invaluable for not only heating your hands up, but keeping batteries warm. And as long as you can keep the batteries warm, even if they get cold and expire in the camera, if you warm them up, like I said, you can usually get a little bit more life out of them.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I'm jealous. I'm going to go to Patagonia.
You are welcome.
Yeah, that'll be a fun trip, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, who else we got here? More questions? So Stephen, yeah, Jose, go ahead.
This lovely picture you have shown with the sun, the hitting. Did you make HDR or only one single picture?
No, these are all just straight JPEGs. All of these are straight
Wow.
JPEGs out of the camera.
Amazing, amazing
Almost
detail.
every picture in the show, except for the one picture of the tree, which I showed you with the edited version. But yeah, everything is straight out of the camera. But sometimes I'm using the highlight and shadow tone controls. I'm using different film simulations. With the X100V and also the XT4 has this now, has clarity, which is like a clarity slider in Lightroom. It actually increases or decreases the overall sharpness and clarity of photos right in the camera. There's a color. So sometimes a lot of times I'll tweak the film simulations. I might shoot classic negative, but pull the colors back even more. increase the shadows, or vice versa. Maybe classic neg, but decrease the shadows, boost the color. So it just depends on what I'm going for at the time. And there are times where I'll won't do any of that stuff and I'll just go shoot and just change film simulations. That's most of the times is the only thing I change.
Yeah.
Is just choosing different film simulations. But I trust the JPEGs coming right out of the camera. They're amazing.
Yeah. Very clean, very
Yeah.
sharp. Yeah,
They're
amazing.
sharp. And they make your life easier because you don't have to process
Yes.
everything and fill up hard drives and cards.
Yeah. I have read your book. It's amazing.
Thank you. There, Jose gave you the full official testimonial.
Yes.
Well, I
I
just
bought,
got- So I'm looking
I bought your
forward.
book many years ago, and it's amazing.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Glad to hear it's helped so much. More questions. I think the great thing about Zoom is we all get to see how everybody's house looks like. I like Faye's Christmas lights in the background. That's my favorite. Is that your real background? Is that a Zoom background?
It's my own.
Very nice.
Thank you. I just
I
took it last
approve.
Friday night.
Yeah, it looks awesome. It's really great. Who wouldn't
Yeah,
want to
thank you.
Zoom with that background?
Thank you.
Yeah, you can see how incredibly messy and cluttered my working space is. I'm like the antithesis of how you should have a clean, efficient workspace. And Stephen, you said that we met at the Ohio Midwest, right?
The Midwest photo, yeah. So you'd given a presentation a few years ago at the Pro Convention, and then we met again at Midwest 2018, so 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, and that Pro photo show in Chicago, that was my first time doing a thing for Fuji, so I was really excited, and that introduced me to a lot of you guys, and
Yeah.
that opened a ton of doors. So I was pleased to share that with you, and so thanks for having me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, John and I have been talking about what classes to bring, and I just thinking winter landscape here in Buffalo and here in the rest of North America. I know you've been in it for a while, but we're just entering it now. So I figured this would be a great class. And the biggest thing is get a little inspiration for people, right? See what you're out there, you're pushing and doing stuff. So it's that little bit of inspiration. My takeaway is macro. I'm gonna go try and get some snowflake shots. Yeah, some of that the frost stuff that you had. I'm gonna see what I can do. I don't know.
Yeah, it's amazing how close you can get with that 50. I do use macro sometimes. I've got one of those MCEX11 extension tubes that Fuji makes. They're about $99. They make two of them, and I just have one. I just have the 11 millimeter one, and that essentially turns your lens into a macro lens, and it works different on different lenses. My favorite lens to use is the 23 1.4 with that little extension tube on. I have to take the lens hood off because it focuses it's like a centimeter away from the lens.
The extension tubes with a 23 millimeter. I have the 23 millimeter f2, and that's my favorite of those small lenses is the 23. And it's
that focal length seems to be the right one for the extension tube.
Yeah, I did the math at some point, and it's the it allows you for the closest focus.
I didn't do any math. I just put it on and see what it looked like.
Dan, I have a question. Like when you're doing macro photography, right? I'm sorry if I missed it, but do you use any lighting in order to get the detail of the shot you're taking?
There have been times where sometimes most of the stuff outside, all the pictures you saw today, there was no external lighting. I just look for good lighting or even lighting. One things I've done in the past is I was photographing wildflowers, and it wasn't exceptionally close, but I put a studio light with a softbox behind my subject, and then shot straight through the flower. So basically, I'm looking towards the flash. And I have a pretty big softbox, so I was able to, basically fill the frame. And so the effect is that the entire frame is white, except for the subject, which is brilliantly lit. It's just, full color saturation because it's lit back from, it's that like it's looking at a slide on a light table, that transmitted light. So, and you could do this with a light. You could just string a white pillowcase or sheet behind your subject, and then just put a light behind that. It's not anything that will help you backlight your subject, but then have the all white background instead of actually seeing the light, and then just shooting straight towards.
Okay, that's fine. And do you do autofocusing or manual focusing mostly for your macro shots?
For macro, it kind of has to be manual. Depends on the lens, though. The picture with the black background and the hoarfrost, I think that was an autofocus because you can be so precise with the X series focus. You can put it on. You can switch to the smaller focus box and move it wherever you want in the frame. And so I could put it. I can isolate a single ice crystal and put it right where I want it. And sometimes that's easier than when I do use manual focus. I was shooting today manual focus outside, doing some close up, and I used the focus peaking to aid the focus with red high peaking. And it works, but it's still a little tricky to get it exact. So wherever possible, I'd rather use autofocus.
Okay. And for most of your photographs, right, do you intend to shoot in RAW or JPEG? I heard you say you get a lot of JPEGs from your camera, right? So do you shoot RAW or complete JPEG?
Everything in the show today was JPEG, and most of my pictures I shoot are JPEG. The only time I'll shoot RAW is if I'm shooting for a client and they don't know what they want to use the pictures for, or they need to do a lot of processing, or if I'm shooting nighttime or very low light where that's going to be advantageous, or if there's a scene where I just want the flexibility. For me, RAW is a choice instead of a default. More often than not, I'll shoot JPEG by default, and then maybe one out of every few photos, or sometimes I might shoot 1,000 JPEGs and decide, I might shoot this one in RAW.
Okay.
Because I might have ideas how I want to do with it. But most of the time I'm shooting, it's just straight JPEG.
Okay. And last question, Dan, do you intend to stack your images when you're doing macro photography or any other photography, like landscape photography like that?
I did focus, when Fuji first came out with the focus bracketing feature on the X-T2, I went in my backyard and shot a lettuce leaf covered with raindrops. And I did focus stacking and using that feature, and it worked out really well. And I don't do it very often, but I've done it a couple times and gotten really cool results. And in fact, I have a post on my blog. Just search focus bracketing Fuji on Google, and you probably find my blog post where I tell you how to do the focus bracketing and how it works. And it's also in my book as well, the X series book. But it is a cool feature. I don't use it very often, but you can get some pretty cool effects with it.
Okay. So you normally intend to use focus stacking through your camera, not through Photoshop, right?
Well, you need both, because the focus bracketing feature in the camera, that just takes a series of photos at different focus levels or different focus distances. Then you take all of those photos and bring them into Photoshop, and then you create an image with all these layers, and then you stack the layers in Photoshop. So you have to do both. You have to do the setting in the camera, and then you have to use some kind of software, whether it's Photoshop, and there's some other ones as well.
Yeah, Lightroom and Photoshop are probably the most common.
Yeah.
But
And-
doesn't Lightroom prepare them for you, but you still have to send it to Photoshop,
Yeah,
right?
exactly, exactly.
Okay. And since you're doing in JPEG, when you're stacking them through Photoshop, right? Don't they get pixelated? Like, won't the pixels in the pictures be spoiled because Photoshop is a pixel dilator, right?
I haven't found any degradation. I think there's a lot of misconception with JPEG being lower quality. There used to be the rule was you don't want to keep saving a JPEG because it degrades the quality. The reality is that nobody does that anymore. There's no need to ever keep saving a JPEG. We're always saving from our original file. And the original file is right out of the camera is as high as a quality as in terms of resolution and quality. It's as high as you're going to get with a raw photo. The only thing a raw file will give you is slightly or greatly more opportunities to latitude for adjusting your tones. But once you've adjusted your tones in raw and exported to a JPEG, it's going to be the same quality. They're both 8-bit photos. So, and as far as the pixels that you were mentioning, I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to, but I haven't found any problem with quality in stacking JPEGs in Lightroom and Photoshop.
Thank you very much, Dan. I enjoyed the
Yeah.
presentation. Thank you.
And the other thing is that Lightroom and Photoshop don't exactly do an incredible job with the X-Trans raw files. The X-Trans raw files are a proprietary design in the way that the filter matrix that sits over the sensor is designed to reproduce. It does some. It's different than what most other cameras use, and so Lightroom and Photoshop are kind of geared towards most cameras, and they've gotten a lot better with dealing with the Fuji raw files, but it's still not perfect. It's still not as good as it could be. I think Capture One does a better job. Luminar does a really good job. XRAW Studio is going to do the best job because that's using your own camera's software to demosaic the actual raw file that you can see on your computer.
All right. That's very informative. I made a note of that actually. Thanks, Dan.
Cool. Steven uses the AD macro. I haven't used that very much. I've just seen it and played around with it, like at trade shows and stuff, or borrowing one. But I hear it's really pretty sweet lens. It's big. That's probably why I don't have it, because it's one of the big lenses. I save my big lenses for the 100 to 400.
All right. Awesome. I'm gonna wrap us up there, Dan. Thank you again so much for your time. Fuji, John, thank you for helping us put this together and for sponsoring the session.
No problem, Stephen.
Again, Stephen from Delaware Camera, Jack's Cameras, cameraspot.com. I threw in the chat one more time, the evaluation form. Give us a little bit of feedback, and it's got links to the specials on there as well. So yeah, I appreciate everybody's time and coming out to join us. Any questions, anything you need, my email address, neff@cameraspot.com. You can find us on Facebook, find us on Instagram. We're always happy to help.
Everybody rush out to the store and buy spare batteries and that ProPhoto charger. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet charger.
Yeah, the dually charger. Maybe I'll see what I can do. Maybe get a little discount code for that as well. But I'll see what
And
I
the
can
gloves, because you
The-
know that they were modeled specifically after Steven's hands.
do. There they are.
Yeah.
Perfect fit.
Cool. I really appreciate you guys having me. Thanks for everybody for sticking around and joining my presentation.
Okay, thanks, Dan, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank
Have
you.
fun shooting this winter.
Okay.
Stay warm. As I'm getting older, my hands are taking a beating. They get cold very quickly. So I'm gonna have to check out the
See.
photo gloves.
See you in Patagonia.
Yeah. Yeah, have fun down there. That'll be amazing.
Awesome.
So cool. Everybody be sure and check out my YouTube channel and all that stuff and stay warm and have fun taking pictures outside. And be safe.
You too.
You
You
too.
too.
We did this whole presentation without masks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
you,
you.
everybody.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
everybody.
Happy
Have a good night.
holidays.
Happy Hanukkah. Oh, there's Don. Hi, Don. I don't know if he was here the whole time. So were you at Stephen, were you just helping out at the Midwest or just went down to crash the party or?
So I worked for Pro for about 5.5 years. So actually, that's how I know John. We worked together at Pro for a few years.
Yeah.
Before he went to Fuji, and so I was down at Midwest for Pro, and then I switched, and now my full-time gig mostly is
Hand model.
hand model OmniCharge. This is my portable power bank.
You showed me that, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yes.
That's why I remember you.
Yep. Yeah. So this is the 20,000 milliamp hour. So about 5 or 6 battery charges, USB-C, DC output, USB AC output, and then a wireless charging pad on top. So
Whoa.
yeah, so this when we met I was working for Pro, but right about to switch over to work for OmniCharge, and so this is what I've been working with. So that's the 20 plus. This is sort of the core product,
And
and
Stephen,
then
what's the charge of it? Sorry for interrupting.
this guy, so it will charge. It's a 20,000 milliamp hour.
I mean, not charge. Like, what's the cost of it? The price of it?
Oh, the cost. So this guy is $199. Is the Omni 20 Plus? It's a 71 watt hour, 20,000 milliamp hour. Charges either via DC or USB-C. So that's this one, and then there's this guy.
Charge in DC.
DC, it'll take up to 45 watt input, so it'll charge in about 2.5 hours.
Okay, so it's like plugging in the wall. That'll charge it 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Charge it about 2.5 hours. Yeah, that or USB-C. Also, it'll take 40 watt input USB-C. So if you've got a MacBook power brick or something, it'll charge super quick. And then there's this is the 20 plus, or the Omni Ultimate is a 40,000 milliamp hour power bank.
And is it the same price, $199?
This guy is $399. It's twice the capacity. Similar on the ports. Everything it's got a separate DC input, AC output up to 120 watts. USB, USB-C, DC input and output again. No wireless charging on this guy, but one of the cool things is if you need extra power, the battery is removable. Let me swap out here.
And Stephen, please proceed with telling, but
Yeah.
will this charger overflow? Like, let's say if I plug in my battery to it and it charged up, so will it stop when the battery reaches a green light, or will it keep on overflowing after that?
It depends on how you're charging. So it's going to be your the charge controller. So if you're using something like the
AC input, you can say, yeah.
So if you're using like a battery charger like this,
yes,
the intelligence to shut off the charge is going to be in the charger, right? It's going to recognize the voltage on the battery and say, oh, okay, the NP1 or the 126 battery is a 7.4 volt, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So once or 7.2 volt. So once the charger reads that it's at whatever 8.4 volt or whatever the top end is, it'll stop charging. On the DC output, if you're just straight plugging directly into a battery, it can overcharge a battery, which
it'll overflow. That's what you're saying.
It will overflow, but you can limit the amperage, and you can also set the voltage so it shouldn't. I don't recommend it. right? You
Okay.
don't want to overcharge a battery because, as I say often, Samsung several years ago taught us all what a lithium-ion battery can do if you're not careful.
Oh, no, that's a different story. No, because similarly, I use a power bank called the RAV Power,
Yep.
but it has a plug-in inlet. But the fascinating thing which I found is when I am charging my Canon batteries, right, through the plug outlet, and once the Canon battery reaches a green light, actually, it immediately stops. That's a really smart feature which I found in the charger, actually.
So the charger stops outputting power. That's interesting. Where it's
Yeah.
well, it's the charger is no longer, so that the charger that you have plugged in is saying, "Yep, we've got enough power," and then the RAV power is recognizing that it's not taking any current off of the
Yeah, it's a
off the
basic charger
battery.
which I got with the Canon pack, actually. So I don't think it's a smart charger, but normally what I do is when I plug on my RAV power, right, I keep an extension actually. So in which I can input two plug chargers, and I can keep two USB plug chargers also. Like, so overall, like once the battery, if it's only charging the batteries, right, and once they reach green light, it immediately stops.
Yeah, so it's the charger that comes with your camera is a smart charger. It knows when to shut off, right? It's not
Oh,
gonna
okay.
overcharge the lithium ion batteries.
Oh, all right. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And I was just looking on your website. So you have the one that has a USB-C input, and then you have one that has or output, and then you have the 3-prong.
Yeah, there's the we didn't mean to switch into an Omni pitch here, but so this is the 20 Plus that has the 3-prong, has a built-in AC inverter. There's also another unit that's just USB-C. So
Right.
instead of this, it has a USB-C output that will go up to 100-watt USB-C. So if you have like the 16-inch MacBook Pro, that takes up to 100-watt charge. So you can charge it at the full 100-watt output. This guy, you can still charge it, but it's only going to do over the USB-C. It's only going to do it 60-watt output, so it's not going to charge quite as fast as as some of the computers can take input.
So then, what do you charge on the 3-prong?
So before I got my little USB dually charger, I used I would charge my camera battery off the 3-prong. I can run a monitor or display off the 3-prong. I can run a 55-inch Samsung LED TV. I can run for 45 minutes off the 3-prong because it'll do up to 100 watts. So as long as you're not heating anything, cooling something, or driving a motor to move something, it generally has enough power to output. So there's all kinds of different use cases for what you can charge. And if you've got a laptop that doesn't have USB-C, you can just plug your outlet right in there and go.
But otherwise, you've got two regular USB ports.
You've got two regular USBs, and that the DC output is a variable voltage. So you can actually set the voltage output on the DC port anywhere from 5 volt up to 25 volt. So if you like, I use Microsoft Surface laptop, so I've got an adapter that I can use to plug in. I don't know if I have one arm's length, but I can set the voltage on here, and I've got a cable, so set the DC output voltage, and I know that my laptop takes 16.5 volt. And then I just plug into the DC, and then on the other side of the cable, it's got a Microsoft Surface Connect. And so I can charge my laptop directly off the DC. I don't need to plug it. I don't need to go USB-C, and I don't need to use an AC adapter to do it. But that variable voltage DC comes in a lot of different weird applications, construction and building stuff. So it's been fun.
Cool. Yeah. That totally sparked memory.
What we about? Yes.
Yeah.
So.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah, I'll have to look more into that. It looks like a pretty useful thing.
Yeah, and we've got a crowdfunding campaign going right now. I think it's ending this week, something soon, for an even larger unit. It's a 1500 watt hour unit, so it's one of the much larger high output units with some fun communication features and different things as well. So it's pretty cool.
Cool.
So,
All right. Well, I'm going to run.
yes.
It's great to be in touch again.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome. And yeah, hopefully we'll come up with another session, and when we can, we'd love to get you out and do a Niagara Falls walking tour or something like that. It'd be good.
Yeah, I'm excited to go anywhere once we can go anywhere.
Yes.
So
All
cool.
right.
Well, thanks again for having me. Thanks for
Yeah, and thanks to all the stragglers who are still on. I'm gonna shut down the meeting. I appreciate everybody joining.
Cool. All right, I'll be in touch in the email then, Stephen.
All right,
you.
sounds good.
All right, thanks everybody. See you guys. Have fun in Patagonia, Jose.